we received the 2-minute warning for President Obama to speak to us all from the briefing room a little bit ago. So within the next 2 minutes, we do expect to hear from the president. So let's go now to our chief White House correspondent, Jessica Yellen, who is at the White House. And Jessica, what do we know about what he might say?
Hi, John. President Obama has just wrapped up a briefing with his top national security team that involved the Attorney General, his FBI director, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano. The Vice President was also in there, as well as his national security team and his Chief of Staff and Deputy Chief of Staff here in the White House. No indication whether they will come out here with him. So far, only the President is scheduled to be here. There he is.
Good morning, everybody. I've just been briefed by my national security team, including FBI Director Mueller, Attorney General Holder, Secretary Napolitano, and my counterterrorism and Homeland Security Advisor, Lisa Monaco, on the attacks in Boston. We continue to mobilize and deploy all appropriate law enforcement resources to protect our citizens and investigate and to respond to this attack. Obviously, our first thoughts this morning are with the victims, their families, and the city of Boston. We know that 2 explosions gravely wounded dozens of Americans and took the lives of others, including a 8-year-old boy. This was a heinous and cowardly act, and given what we now know about what took place, the FBI is investigating it as an act of terrorism. Anytime bombs are used to target innocent civilians, it is an act of terror. What we don't yet know, however, is who carried out this attack or why, whether it was planned and executed by a terrorist organization, foreign or domestic, or was the act of a malevolent individual. That's what we don't yet know, and clearly we're at the beginning of our investigation. It will take time to follow every lead and determine what happened, but we will find out. We will find whoever harmed our citizens, and we will bring them to justice. We also know this: the American people refuse to be terrorized, because what the world saw yesterday in the aftermath of the explosions were stories of heroism and kindness and generosity and love. Exhausted runners who kept running to the nearest hospital to give blood, and those who stayed to tend to the wounded, some tearing off their own clothes to make tourniquets, the first responders who ran into the chaos to save lives, the men and women who are still treating the wounded at some of the best hospitals in the world, and the medical students who hurried to help, saying, "When we heard, we all came in." The priests who opened their churches and ministered to the hurt and the fearful, and the good people of Boston who opened their homes to the victims of this attack and those shaken by it. So if you want to know who we are, what America is, how we respond to evil, that's it. Selflessly, compassionately, unafraid. In the coming days, we will pursue every effort to get to the bottom of what happened, and we will continue to remain vigilant. I've directed my administration to take appropriate security measures to protect the American people, and this is a good time for all of us to remember that we all have a part to play in alerting authorities. If you see something suspicious, speak up. I have extraordinary confidence in the men and women of the FBI, the Boston Police Department, and the other agencies that responded so heroically and effectively in the aftermath of yesterday's events. I'm very grateful for the leadership of Governor Patrick and Mayor Menino, and I know that even as we protect our people and aggressively pursue this investigation, the people of Boston will continue to respond in the same proud and heroic way that they have thus far. And their fellow Americans will be right there with them. Thank you very much. And you can expect further briefings from our law enforcement officials as the day goes on. When we have more details, they will be disclosed. What I've indicated to you is what we know now. We know it was bombs that were set off. We know that obviously they did some severe damage. We do not know who did them. We do not know whether this is an act of an organization or an individual or individuals. We don't have a sense of motive yet. So everything else at this point is speculation. But as we receive more information, as the FBI has more information, as our counterterrorism teams have more information, we will make sure to keep you and the American people posted. All right? Thank you very much, everybody.
A brief, succinct statement from President Obama from the White House briefing room. And I think the headline here is really crystal clear. The president says the FBI is investigating these bombings in Boston as an act of terror. He used those words. He says anytime a bomb is used like this, it is an act of terror. The president says what we don't know, however, is if this was carried out by an organization, a terror organization, either foreign or domestic, or perhaps by what he calls a malevolent individual. The president promised that the United States will find out. Jessica Yellen at the White House right now. New words from the president, new words that matter.
I thought, John, you're right. The use of the word malevolent and whether this was the act of a malevolent individual was an interesting choice of words. Perhaps it is leaving room for the possibility that this was the act of a crazy person, or we'll have to find out why he chose that particular phrase. It seems to me that that's the immediate reason that comes to mind why he would rule out the possibility that this could be anything other than the act of a malevolent person. I will tell you that I've spoken to a number of sources inside the government since yesterday about the use of the word terror and terrorism and why the president may not have used it yesterday and it's being used by so many. Bottom line, they say when it comes to an investigation on the ground, whether it's called terrorism or not, it doesn't make much of a difference. It matters to us in the media. It matters to the public in terms of how we feel about it. But when it's an investigation, they proceed the same way. Terrorism comes into play in how you prosecute these things, John.
And it was almost like he was explaining why he was using the word today. He said any times bombs go off like they did, it is, in fact, an act of terror. Gloria, wondering what you think the significance of using that word now is.
I think it was by way of clarification, really. It's something that, as we spoke about earlier, Senator Feinstein said yesterday, and as Jessica was alluding to, that anytime you do investigate a bomb that goes off that has been set deliberately, it is an act of terror. And I think to your earlier point about what the president stated very flatly is that we don't know how broad this is, or we don't know if it was a single individual or whether it was a group. And the other point he made is that we do not yet know motive. So that's another important thing to consider when you talk about the phrase malevolent, right? We do not know whether this was just some sick person or whether there was political motive, for example. So obviously that's what law enforcement is trying to piece together right now. As we have been reporting all day yesterday, that there wasn't any intelligence gathered beforehand that gave anybody any indication that something like this might even be in the air. So I think that, that's got law enforcement kind of scratching its head.
Indeed, and they're going back, no doubt, over all the information, all the transmissions that happened in the days and weeks before. Jessica, it is interesting. This is a president who often chooses his words extremely carefully. On the one hand, it's also a president who famously is no drama Obama. He doesn't like unnecessary drama, the lore goes. It may very well be that the drama over the use of the word terror or not using the word, it's just not worth the hassle to him. Get it out of the way today and move on with the investigation, which is actually the important thing here.
I think you're right. And I also think, look, he didn't use the word terror yesterday, I think, for a number of reasons. First of all, it was when he spoke, it was just 3 hours after the bombs went off. So they didn't have all the facts that they have today. They didn't have all the same facts that even Governor Patrick had when he used the word terror this morning, or others have all day long today. So it was in the immediate aftermath. Second, this administration has stumbled in the aftermath of other potential terror attacks in the past, sometimes waiting too long to speak, sometimes speaking, in the case of the bin Laden raid and attack, speaking and then getting the facts wrong. They've also been accused of leaking national security information. unrelated to terror attacks, but in general. So I think that they're very cautious about the words they use around these kinds of national security incidents. And so they err on the side of caution. They did not want, I'm sure, to taint an ongoing investigation. And when the president says something from the White House, it carries far more weight, as you know, John, than when any other U.S. official says it. So they were being cautious yesterday. And immediately after the president spoke, I got a call, and many others got calls from White House officials saying, of course, the White House and the president regards this as an act of terror. The White House used the very same words that the White House used the same words yesterday the president used in his statement today, saying this is an act of terror, and but they wanted to wait and see if the investigation was a terrorist investigation. So sort of parsing when it came to a term of art regarding the investigation. With more information, the president now much more comfortable saying, indeed, it is a terrorist investigation, John.
Jessica Yellen, excellent points. Our thanks to you. Gloria Borgia, thanks to you as well. Again, the headlines from the president's brief statement just minutes ago. The FBI is investigating these bombings, this attack in Boston, as an act of terror. But the president says what we don't know is if this terror was committed by a domestic or foreign organization, he says, or perhaps by a malevolent individual. We're following two tracks here. There's the investigation as to who might have done this, and then there's the recovery of all those victims. We have brand new information about the plight and recovery of 176 people who are now injured in this attack. What are they doing to keep these people healthy and get them safe? Once again, we have new information from Dr. Sanjay Gupta when we come back.